All right, the NFL season may be winding down, but these are your last chances to find the sharp money on maybe some games that don't get nearly as much attention. And our experts are going to tell you where the pros are laying their money. Let's start with the co-host of the Bet the Board podcast, Pro Better, Payne Insider, joins us. Payne, how's everything?
Everything's well. How you doing tonight, Steve?
It's been a crazy season with the NFL this year. And I think that the reason it's been so crazy is because legalized gambling in certain states across the nation has certainly added to an influx of public money. And we've seen a lot of line movement in a lot of these games. And one of the games in particular, Falcons and the Panthers this week, really raises, I guess, maybe a red flag. I mean, the look-ahead line for this one had Carolina favored by 6. Now that Cam Newton has been ruled out, the Falcons are favored by 3, and 66% of the early money is on Atlanta. Are the pros on the board with this one?
It's pretty crazy, Steve. What I can tell you is the number is off on this game. And this week, Carolina opened as high as a 4-point favorite in Vegas at Caesars. And it was once Cam Newton was announced out, right? That game came down off the board. Atlanta reopened about a 3.5-point favorite. So the market felt like Cam Newton was worth as much as 7.5 points. And simply put, pro bettors don't agree with that assessment, especially the current version of Cam, right, who's dealing with the throwing shoulder that's likely to require surgery at the end of the year. I mean, Cam couldn't throw the ball downfield. He lost his velocity and accuracy. I think Taylor Heinicke is flat out better than people think. Carolina's organization's confident in him. You listen to some of the players on offense this week. They've commented like how good he's looked. And it's not like, this first start for him is coming against a great defense, right? Atlanta's dead last in the NFL in defensive efficiency, 31st in rushing success rate defense. The other thing favoring Carolina here is the motivation factor. Jobs are on the line. Ron Rivera and Norv Turner, they know these last 2 games likely decide their fate. So these aren't meaningless games to them right now. You had Christian McCaffrey come out this week. He said he's going to have a full workload after being snubbed for the Pro Bowl. He's talked about wanting to become the 3rd player in NFL history to have 100 receptions and 1,000 rushing yards. I think he can make that happen this week. The other underlying element here, Steve, is the defensive improvement from Carolina with Ron Rivera now calling plays on that side of the ball. Since he's taken over the defense the last 2 games, Carolina is allowing just 38% of passes to grade successful. That's an 11% improvement over their year-to-date rate. The run defense now is 3rd in success rate as well. And remember, this 2-game sample was against a red-hot Baker Mayfield, and you got Drew Brees on Monday night. The other thing here, Julio Jones, he's practiced this week on Friday. He's dealing with a hip injury. Friday was just a walkthrough. He's nowhere near 100%. All said, Steve, here, Carolina at plus 3.5 and plus 3 is the real position from pro bettors this week.
All right, let's talk about the Vikings because they won a lot of fans back after beating Miami 41-17, and the public is backing them as a 6-point road favorite in Detroit. Are there any sharp indicators in this one?
Really interesting game, Steve. It'll be fun to see what happens if this gets to 7 on game day. My feeling is we could probably see some buyback at that price. But the real focus so far has been the total. And I think most of the time when you find an edge in any market, it's because something isn't being factored into the equation properly. And I think we have that here in this game. If you just look at the makeup of the Minnesota Vikings from a full season perspective, you're going to see a team that was throwing the ball 67% of the time, like at their peak. That was 3rd most in the NFL. Mike Zimmer's the defensive guy. Like, he didn't like that. He wanted more ground and pound, and so he got rid of John DeFilippo and replaced him with Kevin Stefanski. And if you look, Stefanski's first game calling plays last week, Minnesota ran it 66% of the time. So there's just a massive, massive shift. I think we'll see something similar this week. And the other thing we found interesting, Giants fans listening, they'll remember the Lions trading for Snacks Harrison. He's the league's very best run-stopping interior lineman. The Lions made that trade, and he started for Detroit in Week 8. Get this, from weeks 1 through 7, without Harrison, Detroit was 25th in the NFL in rushing success rate defense. Weeks 8 through 15 with Snacks Harrison, they've jumped all the way to 4th best in the NFL. And then you take a look at what Detroit is doing on the offensive side of the ball. They're just decimated with injuries right now. Marvin Jones is on IR. They traded Golden Tate. Bruce Ellington is out. Kerryon Johnson's out. Kenny Golladay is going to play with the chest injury. He's not 100%. Matthew Stafford dealing and playing through a back injury. And so when you look at how the Lions' offense is trending, they're averaging 4.8 yards per play on offense the last 3 weeks. That's about a yard below the league average. So the simple equation here is more running from Minnesota and a Lions offense trending downward. We're looking at under 21 in the first half this week here, Steve.
No, I think the simple equation is the key to a great holiday weekend is always snacks. You can get the rest of his research by downloading the Bet the Board podcast, Payne Insider. Have a happy holiday, man.
Same to you, Steve.
Well, let's keep it going with the co-host of Fantasy BFFs on Fantasy Sports Radio, Frank Stanfield, joining us once again. Frank, good to have you back in studio, man.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Well, a lot of interesting games, and we obviously just talked about a couple there with Payne Insider, but another game that's really got the entire nation's attention here is that Kansas City-Seattle game. All right, the rule is you always bet the home dogs. Seattle is a 2.5-point home dog in the home of the 12th man. The public has overbet the Chiefs in the past, and they've been burned. They're 0-4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games. But do you line up on the side of the Chiefs once again and hope for the best?
I think I'm going with the home team here. And I know it's tough to say, how quick we are to turn our backs on the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that won a lot of people a lot of money early on in the season. But the best team doesn't always win the game. You got to look at the spot. You got to look at the matchups here, right? And with Seattle, you mentioned it, the home advantage that they gain here. The last 6 times Russell Wilson has been a home dog, he's 5-1 against the spread. Specifically in December with Pete Carroll, their last 34 games in December, they cover 23 out of the past 34 games. And if you look at the matchups, what does Seattle do best? They run the football. They're going to run, and run some more. With Chris Carson, if Rashad Penny's healthy in this game, we'll see him, Mike Davis, and then obviously with Russell Wilson. They have rushed for the most yardage in the NFL this season, over 2,100 yards, and going up against a Chiefs defense that allows 5 yards per carry. That's the most in the NFL. So I'm looking at the Seahawks here as a team that's going to take the air out of the football. They're going to try and keep the Chiefs offense off the field, and I think they'll be able to do that successfully with that run game that they have.
Hey, that's where the pros are laying their money. Home field advantage is certainly real for some teams. New Orleans is a perfect example. They're 10 points better per game at home this year as opposed to on the road. 5-point home favorites to Pittsburgh. The line movement suggests the bigger bettors are laying their money with the Steelers, though.
Yeah, this is a very interesting game, another very polarizing game here between the Saints and the Steelers. You could say last week the Steelers got the monkey off their back, so to speak, beating the New England Patriots, obviously something they've been trying to do for what seems like a very, very long time. But with the New Orleans Saints, look, their offense the past couple weeks has not been good. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, Steve, because over the past 4 games, 167 passing yards per game. That does not sound like Drew Brees type numbers, but he's played 3 games in a row on the road now. Coming back home, you reference how much better they are at home, scoring 38 points per game at home as opposed to 28 points on the road. And if you just look at Drew Brees, 9.4 yards per attempt at home this season, 20 passing touchdowns, only 1 interception. We haven't even mentioned the defense. This isn't your New Orleans Saints team of old, right? The past 6 weeks, this is the #1 ranked defense in the NFL, allowing just 12.3 points per game, getting to the quarterback 4.7 times per game. That's in terms of sacks. And then they're also causing turnovers right now. So they're creating pressure, 2.3 turnovers per game during that span. That's tied for 3rd best. And Ben Roethlisberger has thrown 15 interceptions this year. That's tied for the league lead with Sam Darnold. So I feel like that's not, that's an angle that people aren't necessarily looking at. But I see the Saints getting pressure here and possibly causing some turnovers from Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers.
You can hear all of his thoughts, by the way, on Fantasy BFFs on Fantasy Radio. Frank Stanfield, thank you so much, man. Happy holidays.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right. We'll be right back.